Hi, today we're going to be demonstrating and going over the functions of the RST TM800 dual purpose machine. Okay, so we're going to go over the TM800 dual purpose machine. This machine allows you to cut both cylinder and mortise keys. I will go over the general functions of the machine and then we will learn how to cut keys. First of all, we will look at the cylinder side of the machine. This is operated by using the outer silver wheel at the end of the machine, and when cutting you would cut right to left in this motion. The carriage is a four-way jaw system, allowing us to move the jaws around in a total 360 operation, giving various depths to hold various keys. It has a key set guide to line up the keys and a guide to follow the cylinder key you are cutting. The machine is fitted with a perspex guard, allowing protection to the eye when cutting. There is a deburring brush fitted and enclosed safely on the machine, and also a guard to protect the cutters here. I would also stress at this point that the safety goggles should always be worn when cutting keys to protect the eyes. So the function of cutting cylinder keys. Once identified, the customer's key blank is placed in the left hand jaw and clamped down. The key we are going to cut is placed in the right hand jaw and clamped down in the same position. We then use the key set guide to line the keys up and make sure that they are all square. Thus putting them on the shoulder, then adjustments required, releasing the right hand jaw by pushing down and lining the key back up on the shoulder guide. We can then tighten up, therefore knowing that the key is square and lined up. To cut the key, we bring the carriage back into the starting position where it will be lined up with the shoulder on the guide of the key. The on-off function switch which operates the machine is then switched on. Then raising the carriage up, bring the key we're going to cut up to the cutter, and at this point gentle pressure, and my focus is now on the already cut key which I'm going to follow along the guide. So by turning this silver outer wheel coming towards me, this will now move the carriage right to left and we will proceed to cut the key. Once cut, bring the carriage away, and just as a general rule we like to run it across twice, just a little bit more pressure to make sure we've got the correct cut. Once the key is finished, always turn the machine off first for safety purposes, not to put our fingers anywhere near a moving cutter. Okay. So once the key has been cut, we release the key from the clamp, turning the machine back on. We can now use the deburring brush to take off any sharp edges or you can now feel that's a lot smoother. Turning the machine back off again for safety purposes. We can then take our lock and test that works fine. So that's the general function of the cylinder side of it, and we'll now move on to the mortise side. When cutting a mortise key, our function will be to raise the key up to the cutter, make the cut, clear the cutter, move along, unlike the cylinder key where we just run totally from right to left. So the same function as the cylinder side, we have a guide to follow the customer's key. The customer's key is then placed into the spring-loaded clamp and clamped down. Once identified, we then put the key we are going to cut in the right-hand carriage, clamping down, and we can generally see at this point both keys are lined up and ready to cut. We then bring this function in, which is the bow holder. This slides along the bow of the key. This is then tightened in between the clamp. This secures the key when cutting, so we don't get any twists in the jaw, therefore allowing a cleaner cut. So our function here once again is to follow the guide, and this is where we are concentrating, and we are basically going to be cutting the shape out onto the bit of the key blank we have chosen. So turning the machine on, raising up, so following that function, clearly going along, making the cut, coming away from the colour, moving along, and just continuously in that motion. Unlike with the cylinder, there is no real starting point or end point, so you can make your cuts wherever. The aim just to get the shape cut out. Once we've got to that point, we can then gently run across the blade, just making sure we've got those last few cuts, and then we've got the general key cut there. Once turning the machine off, see, for safety purposes, once the cutters have stopped turning, then release the key we've cut, and at this point follow the same function on the deburring system. Taking off any sharp edges, we can take our lock, we can check to make sure it's working correctly. So now we have gone through the cutting of the keys, what we will do now is just go through the actual setting of the machine. To make sure your machine is set correctly, what we would do is take two general cylinder blanks of the same sort. These can then just be placed in the jaws and clamped down. Once again, we'll just line those up as we did before when cutting the key. Now the function here, to make sure your machine is set correctly and to get the correct cuts, is ideally when we run the key along the guide, we would like to have the key on the cutting side just skimming across the cutting wheel. So we are literally just taking a very fine layer off. At that point, that's where we class the machine as set and ready to cut. So I'll run this one along and test it by turning the machine back on, just raising up, and I can hear that's just touching, and if I was to run that along, hopefully you can hear that, that's just skimming along and taking a little bit off the top. So that's what we would class as a machine set and ready to go. Just turn this off for safety reasons. If the machine does need adjusting, if you've cut some keys and they're not working, you may need to have it cut deeper or shallower. To do this, we need to adjust the guide. By loosening up the knob on the top, this will now allow us, by turning the dial at the back, to move the guide either in or out, therefore allowing now the depth to either change, to go shallow or deep. By raising that key up and turning the machine on, you will now hear that's not touching. Now if I wanted to bring that in, I will turn the dial, and now we can hear it. So we're now at the point of where we're skimming across again. Once we're happy, we can pull the carriage down, lock the guide in position, turn the machine back off. To set the mortise side, we would do exactly the same. It's repeated in the same method, 2 blank keys, raising up to the guide. So it's done exactly the same way, releasing the dial and using the back dial to adjust the depths. As you will see, just by cutting a few keys in demonstration, the amount of filings and cutting that comes off the keys. I must stress just how important it is to keep the machine clean. A major function of this machine to operate is the double shaft system, what this works on. It's very important that you keep this clean and tidy to maintain the good operation of this machine. As you will see where we brush that down, we have a very nice function for the swarf tray, which collects all the messy cuttings inside there, so you can keep a tidy work area. But it is a very important function to keep the machine clean. Just to go over some of the points on the machine here on the parts. All the handles, the clamp handles that we use come as spares. Handles to raise the carriages all come as spares. All the locking knobs and dials, the guides, the key set guides, the cutters, the brush, the protective eye guard, switches, all handles, and the drive belts and the motor to operate. All these parts are available as spares. The machine itself is run off a standard 240 voltage, so giving adequate running power. And that basically is the dual purpose TM800 machine, ideally designed for household and domestic key cutting. Your TM800 key machine comes with a 12-month warranty. During this period, if you have any issues, please contact the wholesaler you purchased from or contact Rollins directly, and we will do what we can to help, be this a repair or offer you a spare part.